Hey guys, HitPaws here with the next part of this tutorial. In this part I was going to actually add a crosshair to the screen, but there's a problem. If I touch any of these buttons right now, it says rebuilding class hierarchy and then immediately crashes. Now it's a known bug in 4.81. I was able to reproduce this in 4.8.1, and they have some suggestions. I'm not going to mess with it right now. I'm going to try to fix it on my own, and I'll do the crosshair and stuff like probably in the next video, because we still have a few more videos to come. There's a few more topics to cover, which are going to be fun. In this one, what we're going to do is we're going to deal pretty much solely with the projectile. So, given that, what we want to do is basically just create one at first. So we will say new blueprint class, and it's not on here, so we need to drop down all classes and type in project or not. Okay, wait, is it? It is not a parent class. Sorry, my fault. We simply need actor, I believe. Yes. Okay, so we're gonna call this my projectile just for now, right? And what we need to do when we open this guy up is it's just an empty blueprint. Class is actor here. So let's go ahead and add a scene component so that we have just a, I did not want that, scene. Okay, then we delete that. Okay, so this is just something to act as a root holder for the scene, and now we're going to add a static mesh, and that is going to be projectile mesh. Okay, and let's just use like a sphere for now, so we'll use the shape sphere, which is going to be relatively large. And then the other thing we want to do is add a sphere collision. Okay, and the sphere collision is going to be kind of a helper for us to figure out where we need this thing, because for some dumb reason this sphere doesn't have its pivot in the middle of the sphere. It's actually at the bottom, so that's kind of stupid, but it is just a shape. So I guess the reason they did it like this was so that if you placed it on the ground, it would appear on the ground like settled properly and not halfway through like a dome. But in my personal opinion, spheres should have their goddamn pivots right in the middle. So we need to kind of figure out where we're going to do this. Now I found we want this as small as possible. Now I found that about 5 is about as far as you can go, which means we need to move the sphere down 2.5. Sorry, not the sphere. Not the sphere. This guy. Because it would be 5. Okay, so down 5. I guess that's the diameter. It is the radius. Okay, it is the radius. Okay, and then we need the scale to come down. So we're going to lock all axes, so we only have to type it in once. And we're going to do 0.125. And take a look here. It's still too large, so we'll half that again. 0.0675. Yeah, 0.1. Yeah, 0.1 is about right. And that's all we really need to do. So we need this guy's, all of his collisions and everything off. We don't care. It's just a visual representation of the thing. Now, obviously, we're not going to use a sphere for a real game. You would probably use an actual particle, but in this case, we'll just do it like this. So just no collision. Everything should be off. Actually, let's go custom, and let's tell it to ignore everything. Object type. We may need to add an object type. We don't want to generate any kind of events or anything like that. We just basically want to disable this damn thing. Well, we do want to make sure it's set to movable, and it is. Okay. Now remember, the scene is going to be flying through the air. We could link this there, but we really kind of don't need to, because everything's just following the default scene anyway, so not that big of a deal. So our actual sphere collision, this is what we want to have be block all, and we need to simulation generates hit events, because we need to know when it's hit something. Okay, and we'll just leave everything like that for now. And now the next thing we need to do is we need to add a projectile movement component, and the projectile movement component is exactly does exactly what it does. It takes care of everything for us. Okay. So what's going to happen is our weapon is going to shoot forward in the X because our velocity vector is positive in the X here. So any speed that we give it will get multiplied directly to the X. So if we can change its direction here, so whatever direction you want, you're in any one of these fields, you're either going to put a 1 or a -1, okay, or a 0 if you don't want it to go that way. So the initial speed, we're gonna just like 1500 or so. And the other thing we want to do is we want to make sure that this projectile does in fact actually have gravity. Now if you don't want that, you just obviously turn it off. There's like some kind of gravity scale, but we'll just type grav right there. Projectile gravity scale, and it's set to 1, so we're good. Okay, so it's all compiled. Let's pull this down. And let's just go ahead and add one in the world here. Okay, so you can see it's kind of large, but we're not that worried about it. And let's simulate really quick. We want to make sure that thing flies away. And it did. So if we do that again, it flies away, and it's not hitting anything. So what we're going to actually do is put the mesh to the sphere. We'll try. It's not a component. Okay, so we'll compile that. I need this thing to actually hit stuff. Also, I'm going to do you guys a favor. I haven't been doing this. I'm just going to go ahead and turn everything down. All right. I'm sorry about that. That all my videos have the volume so freaking loud. Okay, so simulate. Is it going to hit? Not yet. Not yet. Let's check that collision. Block all. Hits events. Wobble. We don't want to simulate physics because then it'll move away from our actual route and all that stuff. Okay, it's still flying through the ground. It's kind of irritating, I'll be honest. It's irritating. Yarr. Projectile movement. We should bounce. We don't want it to bounce. Let's do this really quick on the sphere. Let's add a hit event on component hit. And let's just test if that's actually hitting anything. Hit. I'm going to say it's not. Now, it might be moving too fast. So what we're going to do is we are going to turn on something called CCD, which I believe stands for Continuous Collision Detection. Yes. And it just means that no matter how fast something's moving, it's going to always give it a check to see if it should have collided. And I don't think that's going to solve squat though. Yeah, it's clearly flying through. Yeah, I mean, you can see it right there. Is it only going so far down and then stopping? Yes, I think it's getting hit by the kill Z. Yeah, it's dying by the kill Z. Okay, so why are we not fucking crying? I don't know why this kind of shit happens all the time. It just does. There's something dumb. I missed it. I'm gonna turn on collision on the mesh too, and let's just see. Block all. I hit you. Block all. Let's block all. Block all. Huh. Irritating. Is this even our... It is our projectile. Okay. Yeah, see how the ball gets... It's actually hitting its own collision and getting launched away. I don't know if you can see it, but the ball is getting launched out of the... You can see it get flung over there. So let's turn that off. And turn that on. So wait a minute. The actor's going flying. Yeah, because you're not supposed to simulate these like that. UCCD. Okay, projectile movement. Let's say should bounce. And it's still just flying right through. Let's delete that. Because we got this default scene where maybe that's what's causing us to screw up. I think it... No, it's still not working. Okay, we got rid of that. There we go. So it was the scene component, the root component, interestingly enough, was causing the collision to be dead. So, what did we learn? Don't ever listen to me. That's a good lesson. Let's just close that and open it back up here. And play that again. Alright. So, and every time it hit, you saw we got a hit thing. Okay. So there we go. So we now have a projectile. So what we can do now is we can go to our character. And on Schust, which is around here somewhere, I should start... that's different, by the way. Movement input shoots up here. Okay. I should start being a little bit more organized now. Okay, so we have this set up ready, and now we've got this. So what we want to do is basically have this come out the end of the gun, okay, and go towards the center of the screen. So we have two locations we need to deal with, the tip of the gun and the center of the screen. We don't want to trace from the tip of the gun because it's never going to line up or anything like that. So this will be for the animation. And we're gonna just put that on a sequence so that we can do more after without having to branch off of here and make this huge chain. We'll just kind of do it in segments. Okay, so what we need is we need the rifle, and we need get socket transform, okay, in world space, and the socket name is going to be muzzle flash socket. Now, there's something that we need to do here. Let's go by local. We need to rotate this so X is forward. What the fuck? That was weird. It was like spinning around a million times. It wasn't really going that far. So 180, 90, 180. Okay, we're just going to even out the rotation. So now we got X forward, and that's important, and we're going to have the projectile come out basically right there. So let's go ahead and save that. And what we'll do to make this easier is we'll just double click Control C that guy, and now we can just paste that in there. Okay, so let's go ahead and break the transform because actually we kind of only need its location, but sometimes location can be fruity. See, we actually need to say get world location because there's a difference. There's get world location and there's get relative location or whatever. And what'll happen is when get world rotation is, you know, hey, this is at 500 by 500, wherever he's standing in the world, wherever the tip of the gun is, right? But but relative location is actually how far away is it from his own root, which would only be, a couple of units. So we're good there, and then what we need to do is we need to run a trace from the center of the screen towards. Now there's one thing that we do know about this character, and is that he has a camera right here, and we do know that we are looking through this camera, and we also know that the center of this camera happens to be the center of our screen. So that's handy, and we're going to use it. So what we're going to do, oops, oh, that's weird, double clicking it, huh? We're going to drag this out, we're going to say get. Okay, I hold control to do that, by the way. If you don't hold control, I am not holding anything, I don't think. Oh, well, apparently you can't set, so obviously it's just going to be get. But if it was a variable, if we drag out, we get and set. But if we hold control, it does the automatic get, and if we hold alt, it does the automatic set. Okay, that's 101 stuff for the editor. So what we want to do is we want to get world location. Okay, remember, we don't want absolute and we don't want relative, because relative would be, just slightly behind the guy. We need to know where it is in the world. Okay, and there's no socket on this guy, so we really don't care. And what we're going to do is we need to run a trace. And what we can do too is we can get world rotation, which will actually give us the forward vector. Okay, so now we know where the camera is and which way it's facing, so we have a point in space to start from. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a line trace, or I think we're going to do by channel. Okay, and then we need to set the start to be the camera's location, and the end of the trace is going to be some amount, so we multiply that by a float, some amount, very high amount, like 50,000. We need this to trace all the way out to the end of the universe, kind of. And then what we need to do is we need to add these guys together. And that would be the end. So it's going to be a visibility channel, and the debug type is going to be for one frame, because we want to see it. And actors to ignore should be ourself, but for now we'll leave it at that. So now we're running a trace, and what happens is we need a branch because we need to see if we hit something. Okay? Because if we didn't hit something, we need to actually behave differently. And if we did hit something, we need to break a hit result. Okay? And we need to know where this location is. So what we're going to do now is we're going to find a lookout rotation between our weapon socket and the point that the trace hit. Okay? And now we are going to spawn actor from class. My projectile, which was oddly not really showing up on the list. Okay, so if we did hit something, we're going to go ahead this route, and the transform is actually going to be a combination of all of these things. So we're going to make the transform, and the location should be the tip of the gun. The rotation should be the lookout rotation, and the scale should be 1. Okay, and that's where we want. Yes, if it's colliding. Okay. We also want to be able to tell everybody and everything what are who shot this. Okay, so we need the owner and the instigator. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a reference to self for the owner, and we're going to get our controller pawn reference actor. Can be left empty, primary used for replication. Okay. Pawn responsible for damage. Okay, so that's stealth. Sorry. I thought one of them required a controller. Is that new in 4.8? I could have swore I did this differently in Rats, but maybe I'm wrong. Okay, so that should get the projectile coming out from the front of the screen. That should happen here. Now, we haven't handled the case of if we don't... If we're not actually going to be able to shoot if we're not looking directly at something. So if we don't do that, we need another make transform, and we actually need another spawn actor here. I mean, we could do select transform or something, but in this case I think it's just easier to just kind of branch it out like this. It just makes more sense. We'll throw that in there. Now our socket transform here is going to be, or you know, the location is still going to be the muzzle flash location, but our rotation now is no longer going to try to aim at the point that we're looking at, because we're not looking at anything. We just want to go straight out from the camera. Wherever the camera is pointing, that's where we want to point the weapon. If we're just looking into outer space and we want to shoot the gun, we just want to shoot straight. That's it. Okay, we're not trying to actually align to something that we're pointing at. So I don't know if this is going to work. Most likely things aren't going to go as beautifully as they should, but we'll see. So I just want to delete you, and I want to hit selected viewport, and okay, it is working, but you'll notice one thing very, very quickly. Okay, so I can shoot where I'm looking, and it'll shoot. Okay, bounces. So at this point, we need our dude to actually start kind of behaving better. Yeah, we need our dude to behave a little bit better here. So what we want to do is we want to come to our third-person character self here, and I believe we want that. Yeah, see how I turn now even when I'm stopped? And we like this better when we're shooting. Okay. So I know we don't have a crosshair, but it is in fact there. There is one thing that we need to make sure that we don't have happen. That's that we ignore everything to do with ourself. Okay, so we actually have a list of actors to ignore here, and what we're going to do, wow, excuse me, is we're going to get a reference to self, and then we're going to make an array out of that. So we essentially just made a one-item array, because it's requiring an array. So that's just going to make sure that we don't factor in ourselves. Now there's another thing that we need to do here, because we need to make sure that our character cannot shoot anything on himself. So to do that, we can either do it in the event graph, but I like to do it in the construction script, because don't forget, any spawned actors actually do run the construction script. And what we're going to do is say ignore actor when moving. Okay, and that's actually going to be the sphere, because that's what is actually colliding. Should ignore, and what we want to do, we need to get the instigator. Okay, so we'll compile that. Now the instigator will be the character, okay, because we told it the character. Not, in both cases it'll be the instigator. Alright, and that should do it. That should do it. You can't shoot yourself at all anymore. He's going to officially ignore that entire actor. Okay, and that's what we want. It's very, very handy. We don't have to worry about collision channels or anything. Oh, I'm shooting my own frickin' sphere. I'm shooting my own collision cylinder. I keep hitting my own mesh. You know, all that shit. That's all out the window now, and that is super, super handy. So now that that's happening, I kind of want to speed up the projectile a little bit. I'll be honest with you. And be honest with you, 6,000. We'll try that. Let's see if it still hits stuff. Yeah, still hit. Okay, and we did hit the guy. Now the other thing about the projectile is that it's not dying away. Obviously when it actually hits something, we need to eventually destroy ourselves. Eventually, but we need to do other stuff too, because we need to give our projectile some damage and know all that stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to set life span. I'll begin play, because the thing is we don't want our projectiles, here's the thing. So I'm going to say dang, I have a scratchy throat. 7 seconds maximum, which means that, okay, so if we say it, okay, well, no, it destroys on hit, what are you talking about? We're good, right? What about if we do this, boom, and we shoot up, and this projectile doesn't have gravity? It just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes and goes and goes. Well, it will not delete itself even if it gets 10 billion units away. And every time you shoot, you're adding a new actor to the scene, and over time it's going to lag, especially if you have multiplayer or anything like that. So we need these projectiles to have this fundamental default kill myself, you know, if it's just too long, right? Instead of don't do a delay or anything like that. Just do lifespan. It's super handy, and it's going to be pretty goddamn rare for me to ever use anything over, honestly, like 3 seconds for this. But we'll keep it like 5 or 7. For now. Just like I said, safety net right there. And again, this is all we're doing, and then we'll just we'll hook that up for now. So our projectile could do damage. Could do damage. I mean, well, it's going to do damage, but the question is whether or not do we want to store the amount of damage in the projectile? Do we want to store the amount of damage in the weapon, or do we want to store the amount of damage in the character or the game mode? I mean, you know, there's a million places you can store it. For the most part, you would kind of want to say probably the projectile. Now, in my game, I did it by projectile. That way I can say, hey, I got a 7.56 projectile, I got a 9mm, I got a 22, I got a 50 cal, you know, and each projectile type that I call will have different damage values. So we're going to just go ahead and add a new variable, and we'll call it damage, and we want it to be a float. So we throw the float out like that, and we actually, I believe, want to make it public, and the reason for that is just so our childrens can override it should we need, because we're going to have everything's going to happen for the most part in the parent functionality. We just want to make sure that our children can override this so that we can have multiple damage types, and also we could have different speeds and stuff like that too if we really wanted to. You know, like certain projectiles go faster than others. And that would be a huge factor if you're making a non-realistic game, any kind of game where you're shooting something other than a bullet, you know, magic or something like that. There's usually, you know, a huge difference between the speeds of these things. So what we want to do is trying to think, how do we want to organize who can we apply damage to. So what we'll do is we'll cast to character. And we're only going to allow ourselves to damage characters for now. Now I know that we also need to probably say, if that fails, we need to cast to like destructible actor or something, then cast to a vehicle. You know, we need to check a few things. Or we could put tags on everything that says can take damage or something. But in this case, because it's kind of rare, I'm not really worried about it. So if it's a character, what we're going to do is we're going to apply damage. Now this is a server-only doodad, okay? Obviously, if it's it will only execute on the server. But if you're playing a single-player game, you happen to be the server, so don't let that confuse you. So if it's a character, we're going to apply damage to that actor, and we are going to use base damage here. Okay, now this is where I got confused with the projectile. The instigator here is actually different. So this is a controller, and this is an actor. So what caused the damage? Well, it was this bullet. well, who owned it? We can get our own instigator. Okay, and we can throw that there. Sorry. Instigator. There's actually a very handy one. Get instigator controller, which saves us doing get controller. Okay, so 2 nodes to do the same thing. Now, damage type class. We're just going to pick damage type. This is just, as far as I'm concerned, is just kind of like a holder thing for stuff. You can do stuff in, like a lot of stuff in here, to have the damage behave differently, but I tend to not really bother with that, just because it doesn't really do me any good. So we do want our damage to have a default of, let's just say, like 10, you know, and then we want to say we hit, and what we're going to do is we're going to type name and get display name, and we want to know who we hit. So that's actually, let's append that together just so it's a little bit more clear. Okay, so we hit, and we'll just put a space at the end of that, and that's, so now we know who we hit if we hit a character, and we can test to see what happens. Now, our character doesn't have any damage handling stuff. This will still run. It's going to say, hey, you know, damage him with this much damage, but he doesn't have any health or anything. So, and he doesn't have any functionality to handle getting damaged. So we're going to need to do that. I just want to confirm that I can shoot this dude, and it'll say I hit him. There we go. Hit third person character 3. If I don't hit him, it shouldn't hit anything. Go, hit third person character 3. Okay. So now our third person character actually needs some health. So I'm going to do new variable, and we'll call this health. And oops, that to be a float. Compile, and we'll give ourselves 100 health. So we got to shoot him 10 times. We'll probably up the damage just to do this. And what we want to do is say any damage. Event any damage. Okay. So is this actually, the cool thing is that when you call this apply damage, the base damage comes through. When you do this event here, it actually knows that value that came through, which is cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the health. We are going to subtract the amount of damage. Okay. Then we are going to set the health. Then we're going to check if it's less than or equal to 0. And if it is, we are going to destroy ourselves. If it's not, we're going to say, ouch. Does anybody actually say ouch in real life? I always say ow. Don't you guys always say ow, that hurts? Nobody ever says ouch, that hurts. Okay, so then we go compile, and yeah, that should be fine. So we know, and he'll die, but let's say, God damn, I died. Okay, we'll pump that in there first. Ouch. And then here's what we want to do. We're going to append again, string. And I think what we're going to do is say let's just say DMG. Okay. Instead of saying ouch, we'll print the damage so we can figure out if it's working. Damage 10. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And he's dead. God damn, I died. He even said it. Okay, so that's all working. Everything is good. That is good, yeah. So now that's fundamentally what you need to do. This is it right here. Fundamentals are done. We need to spawn the projectile, which will be right here. Spawn the bullets. Okay. This will be playstations. And I mean, I could say, oh, this section's this and this section's this. I mean, a lot of people do comment it like that. I don't, just because I made it. I know this is a tutorial and I should do that kind of stuff, and I apologize if you guys need that, but I don't like to spend a bunch of time doing that kind of stuff because it's just simple organization. So I think we're going to end it here, just because I think that this covers the basics rather well. It showed a few issues that we had. Number one, I couldn't get this damn thing to frickin' collide if I had a scene component in here. That was weird. I don't remember that happening, but it did, so we pulled it out. Seems okay now. Our sphere, our actual collision, does want to have CCD on there. Okay, just because it's moving very fast. Okay, we do need to say generates hit events, simulation generates hit events, and we do want this on block all. Okay, and then when it hits something, we test if it hit a character. Now here's here's a thing that we have actually done wrong. Let me show you. If I hit the guy, boom, there's no projectile rolling around, but if I hit the wall, I got this projectile rolling around that's never going to destroy it. Well, it will. It'll destroy itself after 5 seconds, but what we need to do is we need to actually go, what happens if it isn't a character? Well, let's just destroy ourselves. Okay? We could play an explosion sound, or an explosion particle there or something if you wanted to, or spawn a decal or something like that. But in this case, we're just going to leave it, you know, like that. A lot of times when stuff like this happens, you kind of want to make sure, you just want to go down every branch and make sure they all terminate somewhere around here, okay, or exactly right here, because if not, then you could potentially have a bunch of actors that have been spawned and never destroyed. But remember, we got a couple of safety nets against that. Okay, we got 2 in fact. All right, this here, and the fact that if we fail to cast, we do go to the destroy. So yeah, I'm going to leave it here. In the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about firing modes and spread, because those are important. So we're going to give the bullet some deviation, and we're also going to allow you to be able to hold the button down for auto fire, and we may or may not handle 3-round burst, but 3-round burst should just be pretty much auto fire set to do it with a maximum of 3 times. But anyways, hopefully you guys found this interesting and informative. I know it's a little basic, but it will get better, and the character will get better as we go along. So this is Hippos signing off. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.